Hey, in this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own rental property calculator using Google Sheets. And I think the most important reason to do this is to fully understand the numbers that go behind owning a rental property. Instead of just plugging the numbers into a calculator, you're going to be able to understand everything that goes into it and even be able to create a calculator and customize it for yourself, which I think is much more beneficial than some of the apps, even though they're really good on the fly. So the first thing that I think we should do is calculate our payment. So the payment is going to come from having a loan, and part of this is going to be we have a down payment, we have an interest rate, and we have a term and a loan amount. We should probably switch these around a little bit just to make it more neat. Down payment, just for examples, let's put in 20%. Loan amount, $250,000. Interest rate, 7%. And the term, 360. And this term is based on months, not years, because that's how the calculation is factored for the payment. So just remember that when you see 360, that's 30 years, because 12 months in a year, 30 years. And then let's get the monthly payment. And this is only going to be your PI, so your principal and interest. This isn't going to be your taxes and insurance. I'm going to add that in later, but that's not part of the loan, so we just don't factor that into the payment yet. So here, let's just do a little bit of formatting to make this look a little bit neater. Now, we'll just go with like a gray. Let's go with a darker color. There we go. And then box that in. And then, all right, for our monthly payment, we're going to calculate this by typing in equals PMT. And for the rate, you're going to use this rate, but you're going to want to divide it by 12 because it's the rate applied on a monthly basis. It's not 7% per month. It's 7% annualized. So that needs to be divided by 12. Number of periods, it's going to be 360. Present value, 250,000. And future value, well, we're going to pay the loan off, so it's going to go down to 0. And enter beginning, I just always put a 0 for that. Now, if you want this number to be positive instead of showing that it's a negative, because it's a negative because it's a payment that you have, but if you want this to be a positive number, you can just go up here into the formula section, put a negative sign there, and then there. That's your monthly payment. And I usually like to separate these by doing a darker border on the top side. So top border, increase the thickness on the top side, just to separate that out so now you can easily see that. The next thing that we're going to want to look at is our income. So we have our loan outgoing expenses. Let's do our income, which is a lot easier to calculate. And we'll just take congruent with the gray. I'll do white text. And then the thing that we're going to have is our rents. If you have multiple units, the way I usually do this is like unit 1, unit 2. So just for this example, let's just say that we have 4 units. And each one is bringing in $750 a month. These numbers might be super low. Well, these are really super low for any market, I would think. But at the bottom here, we're going to have our total income. And if you just have a house, you don't have to go through all of this work, but I think it's good to build a template out that's versatile. So whether you're doing the calculation on a house or you're doing the calculation on a 4-unit building or a 20-unit building, this could all be the same. So I just summed that there. You can just type in equals sum, but you can see it already populated, so I just have to hit tab. And if you're doing just one unit, there you go. Otherwise, here's this for the example. And again, gonna put the borders around this. Oh, that is way too thick of a border. All right, here we go. Decrease that border thickness. Back down to what the other one is. And yet again, let's separate this with a thicker top side border on the bottom row. So we'll do that. And this one. Oh, I gotta make those the same. Actually, I like that thickness a little bit more, so I'm gonna go ahead and change this one actually to that. There we go. Okay, so we got our income and our loan amount. Now, one thing to factor into the income, if you don't need to charge, like if you are charging the tenant back for utilities, this is where you should factor that in. So instead of having unit 4, you could have like utilities, and then I don't know, maybe that's $150 a month. Let's just say this is a 3-unit building, and the water bill is $150 a month because the water is ran on 1 meter while the electricity is all separately metered, and it's an all electric building, so you don't need to you need to factor for gas or anything like that. If gas was factored in, yet again, you'd have this on utilities. And I always try to incorporate some sort of rub. So if I'm billing back, like if there's 3 units and it's $150 a month for utilities, for the water and trash, I'll bill back $50 a month. You have to make sure that's okay in your market. Some markets, they do have rules against what you're allowed to bill back as far as utilities go, or how much it can be. But yeah, that's generally how I would go about doing that, just to keep it simple. The next section we're going to have is our expenses that aren't current expenses, but they're future or potential expenses. And this is where we have our vacancy, maintenance, property management is going to be a real expense. But you could just call this, it's not potential expenses. Let's just do expenses, and we can lump in some other things here too, because we can lump in the property taxes and insurance and everything like that into this column just to make it make a little bit more sense. All right, so we're going to have property taxes, insurance. You may have, well, you will have maintenance. You may have property management. And I would say with property management, whether you're going to pay somebody to do this or not, you should still factor for property management, because you should get paid for the time you're dedicating to managing the property, whether it's going to be you doing it or somebody else doing it. Whoever buys it from you is going to factor in property management. So you might as well do it so you don't overpay compared to what somebody else is going to be willing to pay you. The other expense you can have is vacancy. And I usually do these 3 in percentages. So one easy way I always do this is just, let's say we want to make that, I'd say the maintenance 10%, property management 10%, and vacancy 5%. Now you may see property managers that say they do it for less than 10%, but by the time you look at a lot of the fees they have, like a call fee or anything like that to come out to your property, I just think 10% is a much safer bet. With property taxes, if you want to make this a percentage, you can. I'm going to go ahead and do it, and I'm going to do that with insurance as well, just so I can make this an example for you. Let's say insurance. My insurance on my property is 0.8% of the total value of the property. Well, total purchase price of the property. So this is where we're going to want to take in this. And if you, just to make this simpler or more readable, I would modify this to have or just make it purchase price. And then if it's 20% down, loan amount is 250,000. So that means your purchase price is divided by 0.8. So 312,500. I just gotta double check my math real quick here. Oh, that's 3. That is not correct. Oh, wait. Yep. Okay. Math's correct. So 250,000 is 80% of this. And you could calculate this off of that if you really want to. You just do C3 equal multiplied by parenthesis 1 minus the down payment percentage. And then if it changes this, it changes your payment down here too. So that might make it easier just to future proof this, so you don't have to keep modifying a bunch of these fields. You could just enter your purchase price, and then everything starts populating after that. After you put this and your down payment percentage in there. Your property taxes, they're going to be based on the purchase price, not the loan amount. So you're going to take this, but since we're going to be using the property, the purchase price for these two fields, we should put a $sign here and a $sign here. And all that's going to do is make sure when I drag this down that it doesn't change from C3 to C4 and continue to change. It's just going to stay the same. Then I'm going to multiply that against D11, and we don't need to do the $signs on D11 because we're also going to be using it for this one down here. So that means we can just drag this one down. We get that our insurance is $2,500 and our property taxes are $62.50 per year. And then your maintenance, property management, and vacancy are all going to be based off of your top line revenue. So I would actually take this total income that you have here and multiply this by 12, so you get the annual income, just to make it a little bit easier. And we can divide it back in a minute so you can get the per month amount. Just want to make this a little bit better. Put that there, bold it, change the color to white, make this a table, and we're going to want to go ahead and make that 10 before we do that. All right, and then this expense, and we're going to do the same thing we did with the purchase price, where we have F7 $sign multiplied by this, and then you should be able to just drag this down. And with a lot of my properties, I have a lot more different types of expenses than this. So I would just put in other expenses as another field that you can just fill in some costs. Because I have, for example, on one of my properties, I have maintenance of the parking lot. I have lawn mowing. I have snow removal and all these other things that you can add in. And you can either itemize these, which is what I generally like to do in my calculator. So I'd actually have a snow removal, lawn maintenance, landscaping, or you could lump in lawn maintenance and landscaping. And then you would just total these down here. I, just for the sake of this video, am going to just make it in other expenses just to make it less complicated. And I'm just going to make that all boxes there. And actually we can probably get rid of those ones, and then we're going to make the top border thicker. There we go. Can just gray this box out because we don't need it, or black the box out. And then let's just say on an annual basis that you have another $1,500 in expenses. So your total expenses are $17,450 per year for this property, excluding your monthly mortgage payment. So this is where we can create another one of these boxes that's just called returns. I'll just go ahead and put this over here. And let's put amount, fill color, make that gray, bold these, make the text white. And then you can put your cash on cash yield here. And then we're going to want to calculate the cash on cash return. This should really be hyphenated too. So this is a little bit more complicated way of looking at this. It might make more sense to just have cash on cash percentage and then cash on cash yield. So you actually know your cash flow yield. And then if you separated out the interest from the principal payment, you can factor that in here too. Just for the sake of this video, I'm not going to do that. If it's really necessary, I can create another video on how to modify this payment calculation to be able to factor for that. But I just want to keep this one as simple as I can. So for the cash on cash yield, all we're going to need to do is put an equal sign, grab our total income, subtract our mortgage payment multiplied by 12, and then subtract our total expenses. So you can see in this case, we lose almost $9,000 a year. Might be a good idea to have a monthly cash flow. So let's crank these rents up. I know you can't do this on a normal property, but just for the sake of calculations, I just want to show you how easily this is to move around now. Monthly cash flow, you can just take that number, divide it by 12, $970 a month. And this is what I would consider your true cash flow, because I'll see people refer to it as cash flow before they factor in these three really important items or even the other expenses, just because you don't know what's going to come up. So you should always factor for some things coming up, but there are things that you can account for. Like you're going to have somebody to mow the lawn unless you really like doing that. Or you're going to have to pay for snow removal if there's a heavy snow. If there's not any snow, then you save money that year. Calculating the cash on cash yield. Now this is going to be the amount of money that was spent on our down payment and repairs, and I actually didn't factor in repairs here. So this doesn't technically go in the loan field, but since this isn't a recurring thing that we're going to continually have to pay for, I do want to put it here, because the expenses are based on how we're running this calculation are calculated on an annual basis, and we're not going to be continually, or hopefully not continually, doing the repairs on an annual basis. So let's say it costs you $25,000 all in to do all your repairs. Or let's just do $30,000 since we put 3 units. So $10,000 a unit to get them up to market. Well, actually, sorry, one other thing we're going to need to add is our closing costs. So let's push this down, repairs, closing costs. And you can see how once you start to have this set up, it's just more malleable. You can keep adding or removing things as you go. I usually like this to be a percentage, so I'm going to just put a percentage out here. Let's just say 1.5%. Make that a percent first. All right, and then multiply that by the purchase price. So $5,000. Then to calculate the cash on cash yield percentage, we're going to divide it by the repairs and the total money out of pocket. To get the property. So that's going to be our down payment plus our repairs. And you can factor in the closing costs into that as well. That's what I'm going to do. That's how I always factor it in, because I consider that as part of the quote unquote down payment, even though it's an expense going out. So to calculate this percentage, we're just going to take the cash on cash yield. So that's J3, and we're going to divide it by the sum of the repairs, closing costs, and then we're going to want to get the down payment times the purchase price to get our total down payment. And that should be all you need to calculate this number. So if we hit percentage, you can see it's an 11.98% cash on cash return, which I would consider a good deal. I really like to aim for anything above 8, but this is how you build a property analysis calculator just in Google Sheets. Now I know this isn't the most organized way to build this, but it's a relatively quick one that you can put together, and you can make this more or less complicated just depending on what makes sense for you and your portfolio. If you're buying single family houses, this might need to be super simple. If you're buying an apartment building, you can have your common area maintenance expenses, your parking lot maintenance is in the CAM expenses. You can have fire inspections. If you have boiler system, boiler maintenance, budgeting aside for CapEx for any roofs that eventually need replaced, or any landscaping or anything like that. It can get as complicated as you want, but just to keep it simple, I am going to put this one in the description so you guys can get access to this, and you can just go ahead and copy my spreadsheet so you can use it for yourself. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one, and thank you for sticking around for the whole time to figure out how to build a property analysis calculator.